In May of 1977, a three-song EP hit the shelves that was an enigma in that while the band was well established, the songs on that EP sounded like nothing the band had done before or really since. I am talking about the Spot the Pigeon EP from Genesis, and from it, the namesake track Pigeons.
Who suffers from unknown diseases? Who gets along when the sun comes up and makes their beds? Paperless, bus tickets all around their heads. Who congregate around the farm square, taking pot shots at the tourists.
Okay, a lot of lyrics to unpack, but first I have to comment that I just love how that note is so persistent, that like soft, light guitar note, dun, 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 and yet the tonic underneath it keeps on changing. It goes through all these chromatics. It's like um, dun 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 no 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 no, 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 something like that. And of course, there's that banjo that's providing some support. And I usually don't read up on songs before I do these videos because I like to make my own like interpretations and then maybe find out at the end whether my interpretations match some of the like statements or whatever. But I just had to see, first of all, see if there was a wiki entry on this EP because I've always doubted Hackett's presence. There are two things about this EP that have always mystified me. One, the claim that it was recorded during the same sessions as the Wind and Wuthering album, because I do not hear the atmosphere of that album on these three songs. No, I don't even hear the Wind and Wuthering atmosphere on Inside and Out. And I could not like the two songs, the two Shore songs, Match of the Day and Pigeons. I could not imagine them on that album at all. And second of all, I don't really hear Steve Hackett unless you point out to me, and like supposedly Hackett plays that banjo, perhaps for about the only time, except on maybe oh, what's that little music hall track on Spectral Mornings? Yeah, maybe there. Anyway, the other major difference from the Wind and Wuthering album being is that the sound is so lean. There's not that big, rich, thick, pastoral, misty pastoralism of like that just courses through tracks like 11th Earl of Mar, all the way through like One Through the Vine, Watt Gorilla, Unquiet Slumbers for the Sleepers, and That Quiet Earth and Afterglow. All those tracks, that rich. It was like the most pastoral, sweeping album, and just almost like and smooth sounding releases at the same time. I mean, just soft as velvet all the way through. And this, I hear a leaner sound that could be, in some ways, a precursor to some of the things they tried during the Abacab era, particularly like on the Paperlate EP. Like this track, I hear some of it of a precursor structurally, arrangement-wise, perhaps to Me and Virgil. And that being maybe the only time they'd revisit. It's also got like a music hall element that they would later, that I would hear somewhat on That's All, has got kind of a music hall vibe to it. And it's also very English. The lyrics, these are the most English lyrics they have ever done. And it's time to unpack the first verse. Who put 50 tons of expletive, SHIT, on a Foreign Office roof? And Phil Collins is careful to not really enunciate the expletive in that line. He just goes, shit, like that. Who suffers from 9 known diseases? Huh, that's a bit of info on pigeons that's new to me. I haven't not having really researched pigeons much. I guess he's educating us just a little bit. Who gets up in the morning when the sun comes up and makes their beds out of paper clips and bus tickets all around their heads? Yeah, the life of pigeons. At first, I guess in the first couple of lines, it's supposed to be a mystery. Is he talking about people? Is he talking about a certain kind of people? Is he talking about bums? Oh, he's talking about pigeons. He's not even talking about people who congregate around Trafalgar Square. I love that also London reference. I'm wondering how many times, how many songs have mentioned Trafalgar Square. And of course, the first time I heard this back in 1993, I hadn't even been to London yet. I had to like look that up. Oh, Trafalgar Square. Yeah. Although eventually I would be there. Taking pot shots at the tourists. Yeah, London has more tourists than it has locals. Oh, you've got to watch out when you wander around the square in the morning because they're everywhere. They're everywhere. So there's probably like they're talking about little white spots. Yeah, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them in the underpasses near the Union Station here in Portland. Anyway, back to the song.
Here we have lifestyle 672, hitting high up in the street. And when he wished to every morning, he knew just what to do. His window legs were all covered in grease. I want them out of here, he said to me. I want them gone. Because you see, oh, don't you see, none of us are getting any younger.
I love how Phil Collins is singing in that soft kind of androgynous tone that he perfected around this time, like Wind and Wuthering. And like on Trick of the Tail as well, and would also be there on And Then There Were Three. But not so much by the time of Duke. He started to get a bit more, take on more kind of like an acid tone at times, and would and his voice would like flare up every other bar. It seemed he kind of that Joe Jackson type of singing style, where like a tender line followed by like a flare up kind of enraged line, just vacillating between those two extremes. That would really come to characterize Phil's vocals during the '80s, and he had a great range, and he would display quite a lot of range and emotion during that time, and it's part of what made him so popular, I must say. Here he's singing constantly, kind of like going into this breathy, kind of feminine tone a lot. That doesn't quite match some of these lyrics. It's like I was thinking, like there I was, just kind of like miming along as he said lines like I want them out of here. But really, the civil servant who lives high up in the ministry. Oh God, you cannot get more English than lyrics like that. Was definitely not speaking that way. It would have been much more. There would have been a lot more anger in the guy's voice. It would have been a much more commanding tone, like "I want them out of here now." You know. Phil Collins, though, I guess if Phil Collins had sung the song in the '80s, there probably would have been more of that rage, more of those like flare-ups in his voice, like for lines like that. You know, he may have gone like more like into like the mama tone or something. Anyway, yeah. Here we have an honest man, a civil servant to boot. He lived high up in the ministry. God, these are the kind. This is the kind of Englishness I associate more with Andy Partridge or someone. Like I could picture this song like say like on Mummer or even like on English Settlement. Yeah. Um, and when he wished to make a point, he knew just what to do. His window ledges were all covered in grease. I want them out of here. He said to me, I want them gone. Because you see, oh, don't you see, none of us are getting any younger. You've got to follow your nose, and if it tells you that you've got to go, well, that's because they're everywhere. They're everywhere. You got to go. Nowadays, they're not the times them all. From the square in the morning. Okay, he just did a ow like that, kind of a precursor to the more acidic tone he would take as a vocalist, oftentimes in the '80s. But he says a lot of these lines with kind of like an androgynous softness that really, oh, just completely, oh, it creates such a contrast to the actual, uh, let's see, the menace that's going on here. So we called in those men, those horrible men. And I love the way he says horrible. So we called in those men, those horrible men. We sent them to work on the rooftops. You see their van is very plain. That's a lyric that's hard to decipher in his singing. And I know they're too ashamed to wear their by appointment badges anymore. Sometimes they use Vaseline, sometimes they use the pill. And then here's a line that he delivers in a way that's almost like almost seems to be showing kind of like an emotional surrender in a way. Um, I've often seen them with a gun. But as years go by, old habits seem to die, and nowadays they knocketize them all. Knocketize. Huh. Is that a word, or is that like a portmanteau we made up for the... Um, and you've got to watch out as you wander around the square in the morning. Oh, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Let's see, knocketize. It seems to be unique to the song, although there's a Reddit on it, but it pertains to these lyrics. Yeah, so I guess that word has sparked some discussion on the internet. Oh God, I can't even count the number of times I was just miming to that song in my bedroom back when I was like 20, and dressing the way I used to dress at that age, you know, all Zolo and everything. Um, Genesis with Pigeons from the Spot the Pigeons EP released in May 1977, supposedly recorded in the late fall of 1976, concurrently with the sessions that produced the Wind and Wuthering album, although I do not hear the atmosphere of that album at all. And yeah, I hear it like a band from a different era. As a matter of fact, when I first heard this, I my first impression, not knowing that Hackett was supposedly involved in these recordings, I thought it was just the remaining three going straight into the studio to prove that they could do it without Hackett. I thought they probably recorded this like in the summer of '77, right after he left. They were like regrouping. They it was like a test of strength for the remaining three. That's what I thought, and in a way, I still kind of like the idea, although I have to yield on Inside and Out. Hackett was definitely involved in that. He co-wrote it. You see, the two short songs, Match of the Day and Pigeons, he doesn't have a co-writing credit on, but he co-wrote Inside and Out. And so I always kind of saw that as maybe a song that had been written while he was still in the band, but recorded after he left. But no, Hackett seems pretty emotionally invested. He's actually said that that he thinks it should have been on. I just as I saw just now on the Spot the Pigeon wiki that he felt it should have actually been on the album. He felt it really embodied the essence of the band. I really don't think it has the atmosphere of that album. I like the song, but it sounds more like something off Duke than Wind and Wuthering. It's got that cleaner, like thinner, leaner sound to it. Like even the faster section at the end where they jam, that sounds more to me like the faster open cadence sections of Behind the Lines than it does any of the Hackett era symphonic numbers. Uh, and let's see, yeah, Hackett also commented that Pigeons, I guess, was the band's attempt to try and stay within to try and play a single note throughout a song, because Genesis had been, was perceived by many as a band that used many chords in every single composition. And this was like their attempt to prove that we can just groove on a single note for like 3 minutes or whatever it was. But the trick here is that while there's that one note playing, the underlying bass note keeps on going down and down and down the chromatic scale, like a few full steps and then a lot of half steps until it gets down to like the octave, and then it goes like back up and then down, like, but yeah, it goes all 12, like it might cover like 7 notes, maybe 8, I don't know. And then yeah, and it's also one of like maybe like 5 songs they've done that could be characterized as music hall. And Hackett pointed that out too. Inspired by, I guess, George Formby, he said, yeah, an English musician. Yeah, let's see. How many music hall numbers have they done? Harold the Barrel had somewhat of a music hall kind of cabaret element to it. Counting Out Time has somewhat of like an oompa-ish quality in certain places. There's there's That's All, and Me and Virgil, kind of. Although supposedly Me and Virgil, according to Phil, was Genesis, their attempt at doing like the band type roots rock. And he thought it was ultimately a failed attempt. Although funny enough, Phil Collins also did some of that on Face Value. The track, like the 4th song on side 1 of that album that Eric Clapton guests on, that one about the leaky roof or something. So Phil Collins was kind of getting into that a little bit in the early '80s, which was an odd time to be getting into that, because that, like, the early '80s were a real kind of barren time as far as like rustic roots rock goes. Unfashionable, but Phil Collins was into a lot of things during that time. I think he was also quite heavily into some of the brassy bands of that period. And I'm casting quite a net there. I mean, everyone from like Earth, Wind and Fire, like American soul funk, to like bands like the English Beat, or Dexy's Midnight Runners. I can hear all those influences like on early '80s, but I'm kind of skipping over there. Here in '77 though, this release was one of its kind. I would totally believe it if it was recorded if it was recorded immediately after Hackett left, but supposedly it was recorded at the same time as Wind and Wuthering. It just doesn't sound anything like that album. It totally sounds like a band who has mastered a time change and is in a very different phase of their development. But yeah, but Hackett is there nonetheless, and I appreciate him, even if you would have to, or he would have to point out what exactly he played, because I don't really hear anything on there that sounds like him. Okay, Genesis, Pigeons off Spot the Pigeons. For more rubies and sapphires from the cow. You see, when I get talking about Genesis, it's like, don't get me started on Genesis. I can just talk forever. One 3-minute song, oops, and a like 21-minute video. For more rubies and sapphires from the catalog of Genesis, see the directory of albums by English G artists linked in the description below. Like and subscribe and follow me on social media to know when the next video is coming out. And leave a comment if there are any observations you have about this song. I think I've covered the lyrics pretty in depth, and we all know what they're about, but maybe you have a bit more to add about the music. Maybe you staunchly disagree. Maybe you think that these songs are firmly in the Wind and Wuthering vein. Maybe you think the Hackett sonic touch is loud and clear and obvious, and heck, you might even be surprised, oh, how could you have listened to all those Gabriel era Genesis albums so many times and not immediately noticed his tone or whatever, And describe what I may, elucidate for me, please. Anyway, until next time, this is Zaragon, the world's most ear-traveled trimaximalist, signing off.